This is Lisa from PAL. I want to talk about stigma today. One of the things that's particularly difficult about raising a child with mental health needs is that you're fighting two fights, not just one, but two. The first one is the one we all know. It's the one where you try again and again to get treatment that works, the right mix of medications, the set of services at school that your child needs. It's pretty straightforward, actually, to fight that fight. But the second fight is more insidious, and the second fight is more difficult. And it is when there's blame and there's labeling and a lack of understanding about you, your child, and your family. It's about labels that hurt. And we don't always see it coming, but we know it when we see it. And the word for this is stigma. And it comes almost as a sibling to a mental health diagnosis. When you get one, it seems like the other one enters your life. When my son was 7, he had his first psychiatric hospitalization. And he had tried to hurt himself, to kill himself. He kept saying he wanted to die, and he ended up in a psychiatric hospital for several weeks. I came home, and he said, I want to go around and tell all my friends that I'm home now and I want to play. And I'm going to tell them I was in a psychiatric hospital. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm not so sure this is a good idea. But he said, the people at the hospital told me that going to the hospital for depression or another mental health thing is just like having a broken arm and going to the hospital for that. So I'm thinking, okay. So he goes around the neighborhood, and we lived in a neighborhood at that point with lots of little kids his age. And the kids were all in and out of each other's houses and riding bikes in the street. He knew everybody pretty well. And so he goes around, and then he comes back after a little while, and I say, how did it go? He says, it went fine. And he goes and plonks himself in front of video games. So not too long after, maybe 10 minutes, my phone rings. It's my neighbor across the street. Her name is Dottie. And Dottie says to me, is it true? Was your son in a mental institution? And I say, yeah, he was in a psychiatric hospital. And she said, oh, and there's a pause. And she says, I don't ever want your son playing with my daughter again. I don't want him to ride his bike up and down my driveway. I don't want him to ride his scooter across my sidewalk. And if my daughter comes out to play with the kids in the neighborhood and your son is there, I want you to call him in because I don't want them playing together. And my jaw just about hit the floor. And while I'm in shock, she hangs up. So I still remember this, and it stayed with me. My son does not remember this, which is probably a good thing. And it went right past him, the way grown-ups reacted. But what I need to say about that is that my son got one thing right. We have to show other people how to do this, how to talk about mental health issues, and how to fight stigma. Now, you probably know that PAL surveys parents a lot. We want to know what people experience, and we want to use that in order to hopefully change things for the better. And we really believe that's an important thing to be able to do, so we do this on a regular basis. We found out that if we don't ask questions about stigma, parents write little comments and tell us little stories about stigma. So we started to make sure that we asked questions. So let me tell you 3 things we found out. We found out that 69% of parents reported that their child's behavior was seen as a result of poor parenting. 7 out of 10 said that had been true for them. 40% said that their extended family, the grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., somebody had made them and their child feel unwelcome at an event. And 42% reported feeling blamed by the school. So that's a lot. Those are a lot of people out there in your world, in your child's world. Parents also sometimes blame themselves. So in another survey we asked, a more recent survey we asked, what do you blame yourself for? And we gave a lot of ideas, and the number one thing that parents said that they blamed themselves for was not advocating soon enough. It wasn't too lenient parenting. It wasn't too strict parenting. It wasn't that depression was handed down in my family and genetics were to blame. They blamed themselves because they hadn't advocated or begun advocating as they felt early enough. So it's Children's Mental Health Week this week, and May is Mental Health Month. And it's a good time for us to hone our strategies to battle stigma. So let me tell you, here as I'm winding down, the 4 things, the 4 ways that are my favorites to battle stigma. Number one is tell your story, just like the one I just told you, because telling a story catches people's attention and it pulls at their heart in a way that sometimes statistics can't. Be conscious of your language. Use language that you want other people to use, model language that you would like to hear, not some of those labels that we hear tossed around. Number three, make comparisons with physical illness, like my son did with the broken arm. That's something people can relate to, and it's an important thing, important tool to use. And last but certainly not least, support other people who talk about mental health issues. If somebody says they had a hard time with neighbors, family, schools, or whatever, tell them, I'm glad you talked about that. And if you get an opportunity to talk publicly, take a chance and do it. I guarantee you, it makes a difference.